too much. I'm kind of doing this back and forth where I go pressure and it's kind of like that. And it makes sure that you don't have any, everything's tapered when you do this, and you get these softer edges. So you're basically drawing in down and up direction. Also, part of getting a good drawing going is having kind of a cool picture to start with. Something interesting about her face that lends itself to do something that you feel inspired, or it feels creative. And the tilt of the head and the haircut, it's not your typical what you would call ordinary. So that in itself can add a lot of interest. So I spend a lot of time looking for individuals that I think have a kind of an interesting look, and then also whether I'm capable of drawing that person's face. Sometimes it doesn't happen as often, but sometimes I find someone who I think is extremely interesting, but they're super hard to draw. And it doesn't happen as much just because I've gotten better at drawing. Just kind of funny to say because I've been drawing for like 33 years. But I've only been drawing people for I want to say maybe since college. So that's been maybe 15 years, I'd say. Before that, I mostly just drew animals and did a lot of landscape. It's not that I didn't try drawing people, it's just I wasn't very good at it because I didn't have any teachers that drew people until I was in my last 2 years of college, and then when I went to art school. But anyway, drawing is one of the things that you can keep getting better at, believe it or not, regardless of age. It's not like doing sports, which is definitely dependent upon your age. I guess provided that your vision is decent. So as you can see, I'm just kind of going over my own drawing, darkening things, kind of dancing around, skipping some areas where I like that highlight. And I'm mindful of pressure. I'm not pressing hard unless I want to create an accent mark. Like here, that's where I'm really pressing hard because I want this tone to sink back. Sometimes I just lay down a little bit of color. Okay, I think I forgot to finish the eyes with brown. My dog started barking, so I had to shut off the camera. And you see, I'm hatching in directions. I'm not just filling in. I'm still mindful of what's happening with the drawing. I think when you have a good start, you know, you're not all over the place guessing, you know, where you have to make something darker, where you have to make it lighter. I think that's the big advantage to spending so much time practicing, is there's nothing worse than guessing, because you know, it's different than experimentation. Experimentation is sort of expecting a particular outcome or inviting that you don't know what might happen, whereas guesswork is you didn't know anything going into it. So sometimes you might feel tempted to make these lines with black, but I would say in the beginning stages, in order to maintain control over the drawing, it's probably better to go with brown. It's definitely not as harsh. If you're absolutely sure that you want to darken it in a somewhat artificial way, then go ahead and use black. Okay, so I'm going to use just a tiny amount of this red because I like how pink it is there. It doesn't take a lot. You see how it sort of stands out? If you can see that. I'm going for subtlety here. Just kind of picking and choosing. So that's really dark red and black in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay down this red first, right on the corners of the mouth, and then I'm gonna go over it with black, because the combination of the red and the black is gonna create kind of as artificial violet. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my brown red. You can see there's a little bit up here. Haven't added any white yet. Let's do the nostrils. Then I can feel after you sharpen, this is why you need a really sharp, good blade on your sharpener. The sharpener actually breaks the lead if you have a cheap one, which is why I use an electric sharpener over a hand sharpener, because the high speed on the sharpener makes sure that the blades are revolving at a pretty fast pace, so you don't get a breakage as much. So I just went to brown. Being mindful of the pressure, the amount of pressure that I'm putting down. So we're lightly hatching. And I'm kind of waiting to I'm thinking I might try something that's low glare for white. Just because this seems to be so problematic. But if it's not bad, then I'll go ahead and use the same white. Otherwise I'll switch to a chalk. Chalk doesn't have any glare, but it doesn't blend very well with wax. So I feel like we're getting to a fun stage in the drawing. I'm always sharpening, so I want to have a pretty sharp tip because, you know, this is how you do precise work. So you can see the distance between here and here. I could make the hair come down further. I brought it down with the brown. And I go over it with black. Oh, I broke my black. I'll have to do that later. Okay. Let's go back to the eye. So a little bit of red here. So I like the pink or red down at the bottom. So back to this one. Again, if you wanted to have a more orange, brownish red, then you would just alternate between this red and brown hatching over each other, and you could get the same effect. Let's do a little bit of eye work. I kind of like the black, so very lightly, very light pressure, sort of expanding to indicate eyelash. Not pressing hard at all. So what I'm going to do is do the gray approach first and then go over it with blue. And I'll show you what it would look like gray. It would actually look. Oh, she looks cross-eyed. It would actually look pretty good still. It really wouldn't be an issue. Eye has to come out. This eye. So the way that you could make people look cross-eyed is where the highlight is. You push the highlight back, then she stops looking cross-eyed. And if you're not paying attention like me, you know. So this little highlight, if they're too close together, you'll produce that cross-eyed effect. I used to do that all the time and I could never figure it out. So then I would just not do the highlights. And no one ever taught me how to fix it, but I played around with it and figured it out. Everything has to do with placement most of the time. Okay, so go over a little with white. Push that. And of course her eyes are like lake blue. As you can probably see, that it's already picking up a glare, because I can see the glare. So my apologies, but you know, this is that's kind of part of the medium, unfortunately. When you use colored pencil. So there's a little bit of violet in there. So I'm gonna go to the graphite pencil and just ever so slightly go over some of the red. So I'll go back and forth with red. And that what you'll see is it'll start to push it into violet. She's got freckles, and that's something that's kind of interesting, and I'll show you how to work on that. So I think I'm gonna change the chin, make it a little rounder. Find my brown. Just cap it like right there. I like that a little bit better. Okay, I'm gonna go back over the eyebrows again. This time I'm applying a lot more pressure with the brown. And then I'll go over it once more with black. As you can see in this case, I'm pretty much filling in, but I want it to have a contrast in some of those areas where I haven't filled in. And for those more elaborate colored pencil where the whole thing is filled in, I mean, it's basically the same thing, except, you know, instead of stopping where I'm gonna stop, you're gonna fill in everything. And it's just never been, I've never been that interested in filling in the whole picture. I like to do it in certain areas, like maybe spend more time on the eyes and the nose. One thing I've noticed is that people really respond well to these kinds of drawings. Like, they're not exactly finished, and they're not exactly like, you know, it's not that you're being lazy or whatever, but it has a different quality to it, I think, anyway. Okay, go back to black, work on the eye. I don't know if you can see, just having the gray has a kind of effect of using blue without using blue. So if you don't want to use blue or you don't have blue, you can still sort of imply Let's add a little blue, see what happens. I'm basically adding no pressure. Going in little circular motions. Okay, so for gray, because the eye, I want the outside of the eye to be gray, go to the graphite. Just ever so slightly. Again, I still haven't used any white yet, so the white definitely does a lot. A little bit goes a long way.